Um, Good evening, everyone, those who are living in India, and good morning, good afternoon, those who are living across the countries. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Tenzin Joma. I'm currently working as a program coordinator of Tibet House. And I would like to welcome each and everybody who joined here for this program. And I request the participants, if you are comfortable with opening your videos, so kindly keep your video on, please. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I request again to kindly keep your microphone on mute so that to avoid the interruption during the session while Ms. Shantila would speaking today's session. Thank you. And before I start the program, I like to introduce that why we introduced this, Tibet House introduced this program, that Tibet House is delighted to host this virtual teaching series on Introduction to Buddhism, which consists of 24 different topics. And we have invited, before that, we have invited several different speakers, and also we are going to invite more in future. And for these speakers, we have requested they have advanced knowledge of Nalanda Buddhist Studies. And this program actually aims at people who really wanted to enhance their knowledge on Buddhist studies, and also to deepen their understanding on diverse Buddhist disciplines in order to lay a basic foundation in Nalanda Buddhist Studies. And also that later they could able to join Nalanda Diploma course, Nalanda Master's course, and now recently we have launched Nalanda Certificate course. So learning these, if you could able to join this Introduction to Buddhism series and Nalanda Certificate course, you could able to lay the foundation of this studies, and also can able to go to Nalanda Master's course, which has already launched a few days before, and the registration will be open soon. Thank you. And now this time we have requested Ms. Shanti Yajnigla, and she has graciously accepted our request. And thank you for doing that, Ms. Shantila. And she will be speaking on the topic Bodhichitta chapter number 1, Benefit of the Awakening Mind. And allow me to introduce Ms. Shanti Yajnikji. She served as a director for 8 years at Chokor Sumling in Bangalore, and the FPMT Center in Bangalore under the Kyabche Lama Sopa Rinpoche. And currently, she is doing the Nalanda Masters and Diploma course from Tibet House Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi. And now I request Ms. Shantila to kindly proceed the session, please. Yeah, thank you, Shan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this course. So it is my great honor to be part of this Introduction to Buddhism series, especially since Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdol has asked me to talk, and especially on this great text, Bodhicaryavatara. So, in the beginning of the session, usually we start with a good motivation, and you don't have to think about Buddha or anything, because it's a lot of secular ideas are shared in the Buddhist course. But in the beginning, just to refresh our motivation, we take refuge in any power which you feel is compassionate and good, even can be your own potential. we will recite once the words of refuge. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By my accumulations of the practice of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So, when we talk about Buddhism, very often we don't talk just about our own mundane happiness and all those kind of things, but we talk about how to attain a complete cessation of all our suffering and attain ultimate enlightenment. So there's a verse from the Dhammapada which describes or summarizes the teachings of the Buddha, which I will share with you. Okay, so it says, this is a summary of the Buddha's teachings. Do not commit any non virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So, so in this introduction to Buddhism, you'll be exposed to some of the things that Buddhism describes. You don't have to believe them or practice them immediately, but just take it as a hypothesis and see how it helps you. So the main thing is that we learn the Buddha taught non-harmfulness. So we don't do things that harm others, which eventually rebounds on us, like the theory of karma. And not only do we stop doing things that harm others, but we try to do more and more virtuous actions to benefit others. And we do this not just by stopping the non virtues of our speech and our actions, but we try to take it also to our mind, our intentions, because eventually the results of action come from our mental intention. So we seek to subdue our mind. And through subduing our mind, we become more wise, more compassionate. And the way to do this is all in the Buddha's teachings. So next, I will talk about this text. So this is a very profound, very important text. And in this series, Introduction to Buddhism, other people and me will be talking about the different parts of this text, which is called Bodhicaryavatara. And there are 10 chapters. So basically the term Bodhisattva Charyavatara can be broken up into Bodhisattva, which is someone who aspires to enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings without exception. And Charya means the behavior or the method of engaging or doing things, and Avatara means how to do it, how to practice. So, basically, Bodhisattva would be someone who has Bodhichitta. What is Bodhichitta? It is the one of the main causes of becoming a fully enlightened Buddha. So, bodhicitta is the mind which aspires to enlightenment, but that is the secondary part. Mainly, it aspires to benefit each and every sentient being, and by becoming enlightened, the bodhisattva aspires to to benefit each and every sentient being, not just the close family members or someone they like, but everyone. And so this requires training. So the bodhicitta is to develop the mind, which first of all motivates towards full Buddhahood, generating a kind of compassion. It's a bodhicitta is a mind which is affinity towards sentient beings, and also it takes responsibility for the happiness and ending the suffering of all sentient beings. So it's a very vast, and it can be difficult to imagine that anyone has a kind of mind like that. And the first time we hear about it, we just think maybe I cannot develop it. But part of the training in the becoming enlightened is to train in the mind, to generate that mind. And once one has generated it, a mind spontaneously, then you go on and you enter the Mahayana path. So Mahayana is like the Mahayana is that you have a great wish. Not only does it encompass all sentient beings, but you're aiming for the complete and full enlightenment. Why does one aim for enlightenment? Just to benefit all sentient beings? Because when one is enlightened, not only has one attained one's own happiness and end of sorrow, but and one can teach that method, but also one attains a way to have the knowledge of how to benefit everyone, because they say the Buddha is omniscient. They know how to engage everyone in the path according to their own dispositions, their previous experiences. Yeah, so Bodhichitta. The Bodhis, someone has asked about the text. The text is available in the stores and all, but there's a link to the Blaze, the book that Tibet House uses as a prayer book. It has the first chapter as well as the last chapter of the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, so you can use that as a start. Otherwise, there are translations in many languages available. So it's generally called a guide to the Bodhisattva way of life. Now we call it Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So the way to practice when one has generated a mind, this vast, compassionate mind, is talked about in terms of the six perfections. So the six perfections are starting with generosity, then uh, moral conduct, then the next is patience, then joyous enthusiasm, then concentration. This refers to meditative concentration, and the last is wisdom. Actually, the wisdom that realizes emptiness is the actual antidote to all our sufferings, and even the only gateway to full enlightenment. But in order to have the power to remove every single stain, every adventitious stain in our minds, we need to also have a powerful motivation as well as a very subtle mind and a driving force. Now, the driving force is what we call the method side, which in the Mahayana case is mainly bodhicitta. So we generate bodhicitta. This is different from some the Pali canon. Of course, the Mahayana teachings, the foundation is the Pali canon. They are also included in the six perfections, but they are the foundation. So the Mahayana has a vast compassion as well as responsibility for all sentient beings. So the force is greater and can drive us not only to end our own suffering, but to end the suffering eventually of every sentient being. So the Buddha showed the aspect of enlightenment even to the practitioners who wanted to do their personal liberation, but it is not talked about how to engage in that in the Pali canon. Whereas in the Mahayana teachings, of which this text, the whole text is has a complete Mahayana teachings, and part of it is also the Pali canon, which helps us understand other people's suffering by wanting our own liberation, by seeing experientially seeing our own suffering. So that is one of the advantages of studying the Pali Canon for Mahayana practitioners. But basically, this text is very it contains all the teachings of the Buddha of the Mahayana, specifically the Mahayana, and it is especially revered for its teaching on bodhicitta and how to engage in the bodhicitta practices. So the last chapters on wisdom, which is also important, but the emphasis is on the Bodhichitta, and it's important in that context also. So Shantideva was a master, an Indian master, Acharya Shantideva, and he also was in Nalanda monastery. So he's considered one of the 16 Nalanda Pandits, which are highly praised by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So the Shantideva was in the Gujarat. He was a prince in Gujarat in the 8th century AD, and he gave up his princely things and went into became ordained, and he studied in Nalanda. And while he was in Nalanda, he would do all the tasks of the ordinary monk and keep all his vows as an ordained person. And he would secretly practice. He never showed his realization or his wisdom or his great compassion to his fellow monks in the monastery. And so at one point, the monks, they all used to make fun of him that he only sleeps and eats, and he doesn't really show any big qualities. We don't know if he's studying or not. So they decided to make a little bit of fun of him, kind of mocking. So they went up to him and said, like, we've arranged a big teaching. Since you're such a great scholar, such a great master, we've arranged for you to teach in front of a huge audience. And they went and invited a whole lot of people, and they escorted Acharya Shantideva to the throne. And the throne was like way up. It was very high, so a normal person couldn't climb up the throne. So Shantideva, of course, he knew what they were saying, and also then he flew up onto the throne, and he showed a kind of miraculous aspect. And then he started teaching this text in the oral form. And when he started teaching, they realized this person actually knows a lot. And he actually and then later on he went off to South India, and people followed him and they said we're sorry, and then they wrote down the text. So that's the story of Acharya Shantideva. He never showed the aspect of too many high qualities, but he was a very good practitioner. In fact, the whole book is a kind of conversation with himself. So yeah, so I will start with the first chapter. In presenting the six perfections and way to generate bodhicitta and then actually practice the six perfections, Shantideva starts with what are the benefits. So, a person before they generate bodhicitta would like to know why one would actually try to generate this mind, which is the gateway to the Mahayana, and it gives a kind of enthusiasm, a kind of energy to the person. Yeah, so he starts by paying homage. Like in most texts, Buddhist texts, they pay homage to the Buddha because the Buddha is the one which they want to emulate, the one that's worthy of emulation and the worthy of homage. So he uses the term Sugata. Sugata means one who has gone to bliss. So basically, the Buddha has achieved all the good qualities. Not only that, good qualities, happiness, complete happiness is irreversible, and through that, he's able to protect beings so that they can become like himself. So he prostrates to the pays homage basically to the Buddhas, and the Buddhas having the fully omniscient, fully realized mind, which which knows the ultimate reality of the world and has the capability to lead sentient beings to the state of full enlightenment, and also they are devoid of suffering. So the noble children here refers to the bodhisattvas. These are people who have generated the wish to free all sentient beings. And the reason they want to attain enlightenment is so they'll be able to benefit all sentient beings in a very complete and proper way. So then he says that Acharya Shantideva says he would like to tell people, he will explain how to engage in the vows of the Buddha's children, the Bodhisattvas, once they've generated the mind, how to practice the six perfections. And another important thing that Acharya Shantideva mentions is that the meaning of which I have condensed in accordance with the scriptures. So he's saying that he has not invented something new. It's all what is there in the Buddhist scriptures. He has just condensed it and put it in basically in his own words, and it's all based on the Buddha's teachings. And he doesn't. He has shows a humble attitude of not having added anything of his own. Then he says, there is nothing here that has not been explained before, and I have no skill in the art of rhetoric. And so the main thing is here we are not looking to have very good prose, but he's trying to explain the meaning so people get it. And not only it's like an inner dialogue. He quarrels with himself and he's trying to harm someone why he shouldn't. And also, it is very relevant, even though it was written in the 8th century. We can see this in our own life, how to practice. So he's saying here he's not trying to help others so much as acquainted with his own mind. That in writing this down and talking, speaking to others, he can get an idea of it himself. For due to acquaintance with what is wholesome, the force of my faith may increase because of these words. If, however, these words are seen by others equal in fortune to myself, may it be meaningful for them. Um, yeah, so if people are interested and people who have an aspiration to develop bodhicitta, then they can benefit from this. Leisure and endowments are very hard to find, and since they accomplish what is meaningful for humanity, if I do not take advantage of them now, how will such a perfect opportunity come about again? Yeah, so we have a fortunate rebirth, what is called a precious human rebirth, or almost precious human rebirth. And we have the advantage not only that we are human and we can learn and act in a way according to our intentions, but also that we have access to certain teachings and we have the leisure, the time to go through all this. So once we have this opportunity, that we've met the teachings, we have the time. If we do not take advantage of them now, not only for ourselves, but for whole of humanity. So training the mind to attain Buddhahood for the whole of humanity, if we don't do it now, our next rebirth may not be so favorable. So we should take every advantage of each moment. So for beginners, people may think, yeah, enlightenment is very far off. Such a vast idea of compassion is very difficult to generate. But we start where we are and we keep building up. We can see examples like Shakyamuni Buddha himself, how he was able to benefit so many people just by teaching and as an example. So we can slowly take heart that at least we should not waste what time we have and slowly learn. So the compassion may not come to you naturally, at least so much compassion, and maybe you cannot generate it immediately, but over time through training in these very practices that are laid out in this book, you can increase the scope of your interest, your concern, your compassion, and then slowly you can go to generate bodhicitta and practice the perfection. So we all have that potential. Just as a flash of lightning in a dark, cloudy night, this is the fifth verse. for an instant brightly illuminates all. Likewise, in this world, through the might of the Buddha, a wholesome thought rarely and briefly appears. So, usually most of our life we are bound, even if we do something like give to a beggar, then we may regret, oh, what if he's an alcoholic, oh, maybe I should have spent those 10 rupees on something else. So we think we're very caring, but usually most of our day, like, we have some kind of attachment to the next meal, or we have anger towards people. So the thought of pure virtue, trying to benefit someone, it doesn't come up very often. And hence, virtue is perpetually feeble. This is the sixth verse. The great strength of immortality being extremely intense, and except for a fully awakened mind, by what other virtue will it be overcome? So we need a very powerful force to actually drive out our past negative karmas, our habituated delusions towards thinking only of ourselves. There's nothing wrong about having seeking happiness for ourselves, but if it makes us do something bad to someone else, or it's a cause of someone else's happiness, then it becomes a cause of later on creating causes for our own unhappiness. So we should look after ourselves, but not at the cost of others. So if we try to benefit others, then we also reap the benefits. The true happiness comes from benefiting others. That's basically it's a theory of karma, and also we can see it in our in our everyday life that if we try to help people, very often gives us a feeling of happiness. And we see people who are kind and all, people like to be around them. So there's a kind of immediate gratification if you try to be more compassionate, more loving and concerned about others. But if you develop bodhicitta, then you can drive out all those kind of delusions, all those negative karmas in a very intense way. The seventh verse says, all the Buddhas who have contemplated for many eons have seen it to be beneficial, for by it the limitless masses of beings will quickly attain the supreme state of bliss. Yeah, so Acharya Shantideva here is saying that you know how the Buddhas have attained their state of enlightenment. It's through bodhicitta. So they find it beneficial, so we should emulate them. So there's no other way we can attain Buddhahood, which is a state of complete happiness and freedom from suffering. And and also, not only is it good for the Buddha, but it's good for because the Buddha can guide others. It's through the Buddhas want to help everyone, they have the power, but there's equal power in the sentient beings. They have to have the karma to listen, to be able to follow the teachings of the Buddha. So it's both karma from both sides. So the Buddhas cannot bless us and make us suffering go away, give us realization. They can only teach us. Ultimately, they can only teach us. We have to also generate that mind and develop the qualities according to the teaching of Buddha. And also partly, the Buddha also said that we should debate. We should not take it at face value. We should debate, and we should understand it through questioning and reasoning, whether what the Buddha said is true. Because otherwise, we wouldn't have understood it at all, and our whole foundation would be very shaky. So, through the teaching, the Buddha is able to bring us to the state of bliss, will be able to bring us to the state of bliss as himself. So, although the Buddha wants to benefit everyone, and so will we when we generate bodhicitta, it also depends on the other beings whether they have the karma, they have imbibed certain good qualities that they're able to improve themselves. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions? Maybe we can open for a short question round. You can raise your hand or virtually. Okay, so we'll continue with the talk. This chapter basically is introducing the reader to what is Bodhichitta, why we should develop it. So the next eighth verse says, those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of their conditioned existence, those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys, and those who wish to experience much happiness, should never forsake the awakening mind. The awakening mind here refers to Bodhichitta. Bodhi is enlightenment and Chitta is the mind of enlightenment. So often the Buddha is called the awakened one because the Buddha, he or she has perfected all the positive qualities and removed all the negative qualities. So the person is awake. Actually, we all have the potential, but that Buddha has realized that potential. So the awakening mind is a doorway. So through this mind, we are able to finally achieve Buddhahood or be awakened. So here it says, even for our own benefit, we should develop a bodhicitta because the biggest happiness comes from caring for others. That's the way to generate happiness. So one should, if one cares for oneself and wants to attain happiness, one has to have a concern for others, unconditional, totally even concern for others, and the wish to even forsake one's own happiness for the sake of others. But as a byproduct, one becomes a Buddha. So one achieves one's own happiness because you're thinking always about others and you're always benefiting others perfectly. So even if we want to remove our own sorrows, and of course, the main thing is to generate the wish that all beings, other beings also partake in that joy. So in any case, we should never forsake bodhicitta, the awakening mind, once we have generated, because it achieves aims both of ourselves as well as others. The ninth verse goes, the moment an awakening mind arises in those fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence, they will be named a child of the Sukhatas and will be revered by both humans and gods of the world. So, as of now, we are in the jail of cyclic existence. Most of us, I mean, to outward appearance. So, cyclic existence is the wheel of, we are constantly driven by delusions and negative karma to rebirth into states of suffering or partial suffering. And it's a kind of endless kind of thing. We just keep perpetuating it because we keep developing delusions and then doing things which are harmful to others, negative karma, and it goes on. It's an endless cycle. So the root of that, creating those illusions, actually is a kind of ignorance. It's a kind of grasping at the self, and that ignorance. Has to be removed if anybody has to be free from the cycle of rebirth in suffering states and having no control over our experiences. So even if we have good experience, there's dissatisfaction, there are all kinds of problems, and in the end we just thrown into another rebirth, over which we may have more suffering, and we are never likely to get out of this unless we actually break the ignorance, the have the word ignorance, and break the with a wisdom so sharp that one is that has to be powered by a mind which is like a renunciation or a bodhicitta. So the power of the mind and the driving force, motivation to overcome hardships and all comes from bodhicitta. And what actually severs the cyclic existence is the wisdom of emptiness. So once one becomes a bodhisattva, that means one has a kind of always spontaneous wish to benefit sentient beings and to attain the final goal just to benefit sentient beings. One will be called a child of the Sugatas. So that means one has become a bodhi. One is firmly on the path to Buddhahood. So that's what child of the Sugatas means. So one is in the lineage of becoming a Buddha. That doesn't mean we are genetically, it's nothing to do with genetics. It's just that one is now in the line to become a Buddha. One is protected by the Buddha because we have to be helped by the Buddha and others to attain that state. So once person has this kind of aspiration and is training, naturally people like that person, right? And so everyone, even people who are powerful, they all revere, for example, His Holiness. He's a Buddha, but some people see him as a bodhisattva. But everyone, most people, they kind of respect him because he has an equal compassion, he has a kind of wisdom, and people people who even on the way to that they have a kind of reverence, and people listen to them. So this is one of the advantages mentioned in this chapter by Shantideva. Of course, it would be maybe not a very good motivation one wants fame, but one starts with our own self-cherishing mind, and using that kind of starting motivation, we start to use to get see the benefits of generating bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is like the supreme goal-making elixir, for it transforms the unclean body we have taken, the 10th verse, into the priceless jewel of a Buddha form, therefore firmly seize this awakening mind. So we have an ordinary body which is subject to illness, death, different kinds of suffering, and we can at times be stupid, do things which are harmful to oneself and others. But through bodhicitta, one can develop the force and the motivation to transform the same body into the Buddha, which can benefit can benefit everyone, and not only that, has achieved a state of purification. So use this bodhicitta. You have to seize this bodhicitta, because it's a cause that can make even an ordinary action, even an ordinary person, into a more into an exalted person. So even though you're not a bodhisattva yet, I'm saying to ordinary appearances, at least you can uh, emulate the bodhisattva. You imagine you're a bodhisattva. Imagine you're His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then when you do actions, you're like kind of saying, "Oh, I can't do this because that's not what a bodhisattva would do. Bodhisattva would not step on an ant because an ant is a sentient being. I mean, knowingly step on an ant. So, like that. So, this whole awakening mind is what can transform us who have this potential into a Buddha. So, it's like a gold making elixir. And the 11th chapter says, since the limitless mind of the sole guide of the world has, upon thorough investigation, seen its preciousness, all beings wishing to be free from worldly abodes should firmly take hold of this precious awakening mind. So we see also that the Buddha, he taught, when he taught the Mayana path, he taught bodhicitta. He said it is the cause of my becoming a Buddha. So we see how precious this is by looking at the benefits, looking at how it is the driving force which can lead any person to Buddhahood, and we can see the person who has kind of is kind of seeing that it's not enough to just make a lot of money and all these kind of party every weekend and all. But something beyond that, that person will see that to become Buddha, one has to generate the awakening mind. So we have to see the benefits and from that train in how to generate the awakening mind. So the two main reasons to become a Buddha is the wisdom of emptiness and the bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is a kind of affective mind. It's not so much cognitive. It just has an affinity. It's a power force. And in fact, the wisdom of emptiness is only to break the afflictions of the person of the bodhisattva, and also to remove the final very subtle stains of the afflictions, which can only be removed if one has the awakening mind. So the wisdom is the final remedy, but also the bodhicitta has a kind of expansive quality, which is very important to remove the subtle stains preventing us from becoming Buddhas, preventing us from limitless happiness. So the flowing of the mind comes from bodhicitta. So the our concern right now is towards our people who are close to us, people who benefit us. So that's usually our kind of compassion and love is to people who benefit us. But we should slowly expand this to people we don't know, people who don't necessarily benefit us directly, people who even try to harm us. And expanding this circle of our own concern is one of the things. So our mind kind of flows towards other beings and other things, and the world it becomes much vaster. So it's a kind of expansive mind, and also taking this responsibility is a feature of bodhicitta. It's not just you wish that people be free of suffering, but you take the responsibility. I myself will develop the qualities so that I'm able to free everyone. And everyone means everyone, not just people you like, not just one group of people who come from your hometown, who are in college with you, but everybody, including the dogs and the cats and all those who have the potential to be awakened. So you include everyone, and this kind of equal to everyone is also a future feature, and also the thing of taking responsibility for everyone's well-being, happiness, freedom from all suffering. So the two main qualities that we need to develop is we need to develop the antidote to the self-grasping ignorance, which is affected by the wisdom, which is removed by the wisdom, and also we need to remove self-cherishing, seeing ourselves as the center of the world, seeing ourselves as more important somehow than everyone else. So bodhicitta is a very good antidote to this particular mind of self-cherishing, seeing ourselves more important than others. It's a kind of natural for most people, but we have to weaken this through the practice of the six perfections, and also through the practice of generating the mind of bodhicitta. So one more thing about seeing the benefits. So the first chapter talks about the benefits of bodhicitta. So even when one is in the path, one has started studying and all, sometimes we get discouraged. We don't know if we can keep this up, especially if someone is really irritating, someone is harming us. So we don't know how to overcome that obstacle, overcome our own obstacle to seeing that person as pure and having Buddha nature. So then we can read this chapter, benefits of the awakening mind, to see how it is really important that one does not abandon even one sentient being. So through this, we are able, through our own self-cherishing, we see the benefit to ourselves, then we turn it into benefiting others, and through that we can remove our own self-cherishing. So that way, that is another benefit of this chapter. And in the next few chapters, you're also prepared to take the bodhisattva, to make a commitment to practice bodhicitta, and then take the vows. And then the next, from the chapter 4 to to 9, are about the six perfections. Basically, they are the subjects which one the practice of the Mahayana practitioner, which of course includes that of the people who practice the teachings which are meant for those who practice personal nirvana. It's a kind of those are the foundation. The Pali Canon is also included, and so this book is a way Shantideva has kind of summarized and put it out so that we know how to, and it's particularly for Mahayana because it starts out saying about the awakening mind and the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So the 12th verse says, all other virtues are like plantain trees, for after bearing fruit they simply perish. Yet the perennial tree of the awakening mind unceasingly bears fruit and thereby flourishes without end. So we see if we practice a good deed, we generate a small positive karma which will result in our own benefit, our own happiness later on. But then it's finished, that karma is over. But if we generate bodhicitta, and we have bodhicitta even in a kind of contrived form, then now if we practice a virtue, we are doing it for the benefit of all sentient beings. We are doing it towards enlightenment, towards Buddhahood. So now that actually that virtue multiplies because we are doing it for everyone, and so until we reach Buddhahood and beyond, it's still there. It's still bearing fruit. It's all in the ocean of our merit is all dedicated towards that end. So that's one quality of bodhicitta, because it multiplies our own merit, and it doesn't generate. Now it's not over once the fruit has been realized. Then the 13th verse of this first chapter says, like entrusting myself to a brave person when greatly afraid, by entrusting myself to this awakening mind, I shall be swiftly liberated. Even if I have committed extremely unbearable wrongs, why then do the conscientious not devote themselves to this? So remember, when we have the awakening mind, or when someone has the awakening mind, actually they are not only they collect merit in the intention. That means we want to benefit everyone, all sentient beings, and have the complete benefit for them. So, if we want to attain enlightenment or even be free from suffering, one has to burn up the negative karma, at least partly, which we have from beginless lives, which we have in our, which are resulting in our suffering right now and in the future. So, if we have this intention of bodhicitta, we can burn the negative karma. It's a very strong, virtuous mind, and any virtue done with that and regret with that can burn up lot of our negative karma, and we can of course quickly gain a lot of virtuous karma, good positive minds. We can remove our delusions of anger, because if you have a mind of patience, if you have a mind to benefit someone, then a mind of anger cannot arise at the same time. So as we try to generate bodhicitta, anger may diminish. It won't go overnight, but we can slowly remove our anger. And similarly, all the things that make us harm other people can slowly be removed. So this mind that from the beginning we say we want to attain enlightenment to benefit everyone completely, it's like a very powerful motivator that makes any negative karma very easy to purify that negative karma with this motivator. And after all, our negative karma is generated based on other sentient beings, because we have harmed other sentient beings. If we are trying to benefit them, ultimately, this is one of the four opponent powers actually to develop bodhicitta. Now we're saying that now we want to benefit all sentient beings. So the purification comes naturally. Just so the 14th verse goes, just like the fire at the end of an age, it instantly consumes all great wrongdoing. Its unfathomable advantages were taught to the disciple Sudana by the wise Lord Maitreya. So, the advantages, yeah, as I said, the advantage of bodhicitta is like it's a very strong mind of compassion and virtuous. So it can very quickly go through purifying our negative karma, negative thoughts. So, in brief, the awakening mind should be understood to be of two types: the mind that aspires to awaken and the mind that ventures to do so. So, when we talk about categories of bodhicitta, so first we say like we aspire. So there's no firm commitment. We're saying I'm not going to think day and night immediately about how to benefit beings, how to become a Buddha and all. But I will try to stop harming people. Try to stop, try to be nice, a little bit nicer. So then you just aspire. You think, oh, it'll be good to develop bodhicitta, and then you study and you think, oh yeah, and you see examples of people who are compassionate. The people who can seem to be kind and all, but when people have this, it's like you're training yourself. So it's not like for sure that people give to beggars and all. It's to truly benefit others. So it's slightly different from people who can seem to be very nice, but it goes beyond that. One is able to give up a lot of your own things to, and it's not just a surface level. It's a very deep kind of profound kind of compassion. So you start, you aspire, you say, okay, now I'll start to think about bodhicitta. I'll try to maybe meditate on how to generate bodhicitta and and all that. And then the here one of the ways you can strengthen your bodhicitta and all is then you take a vow. From now onwards, as far as possible, I try to do these things so that I will always be thinking about bodhicitta. Whatever I do, I try to do it for the benefit of all sentient beings and to attain Buddhahood, to purify my own mind, so I'm able to do that. So then you engage, then you start to actually do the activities like generosity. When you give, you try to help others. Now, when you do generosity, which is the first perfection or the first paramita, it's also to develop a connection with the person. So that's why when one starts out to help others, like you just say, you don't have to give a lot of things. You just give a little bit of what you need, what the other person will really benefit from, and maybe it's even your time or your attention. And also that's how it starts with generosity, and then you make a connection with people, and then you develop the moral ethics, a strong moral ethics. So one of the things is you stop doing things that blatantly harm or generally harm people, like lying and stealing and those kind of things. And then also you try to benefit others and try to do good things. That is the second paramita, second perfection, which is that of moral ethics. This is all these parameters of perfections are also talked about in this very book, and it'll be covered by others. So morality and ethics are covered in the chapters 4 and 5, and there are two chapters. And then the chapter on patience. Now, patience is a kind of forbearance, a kind of toughness to hardship, that when things go wrong, you don't like get all upset and all. It's not necessarily patience when someone abuses you. It can also be patience in the sense that one doesn't retaliate immediately or doesn't try to one just keep still. Like even Bodhichitta in Shantideva's book, in this very book, he talks about, like, in the beginning, if someone abuses you, our first response is like to shout back or maybe hit the person. So then he says, I will just remain like wood. So I don't say anything, I don't react. And later on, I think when I've cooled down, I think what to do. You can take countermeasures, but you should not retaliate out of anger, out of feeling of to harm the other person outright. So, so the thing is that so the paramita of patience. So the all these activities you keep doing, and of course, part of the becoming enlightened. Of course, the main part is to develop the wisdom that cuts ignorance, which is the main obstacle to which is the main obscuration, which stops us from becoming Buddha, and the imprints of those also stop us from becoming a Buddha. So, so then from the next chapter, the is it talks about how to the beginning of how you set the ground. You set the ground by confessing. So it's a very good chapter. It talks about all kinds of things we might have done, and though it was written in eighth century, a lot of the things still apply. And also, it just kind of prepares us to aspire to the mind of bodhicitta. The next chapter, you actually take the kind of commitment to yourself and to the Buddhas, that from now onwards you will try to be like a bodhisattva. And then the paramitas go on, and then after patience is joyous enthusiasm, then how to develop meditative concentration. So if you even if you develop even bodhicitta and wisdom, if you don't have a mind which can focus, which can analyze, which can stay on something, which can be malleable enough, one cannot develop a strong mind enough to cut ignorance. And also, another reason people, bodhisattvas, like to do concentration meditation, it helps a bodhisattva to generate a kind of clairvoyance and those kind of other kind of qualities. And then, of course, the wisdom chapter, ninth chapter of Bodhisattva Charyavatara, talks about the wisdom of emptiness, which is the ninth paramita, ninth perfection. And the 10 chapters are dedication. So in these steps, first aspiring, then actually engaging bodhicitta, one generates bodhicitta and engages in the deeds. The 16th verse of this chapter says, as is understood by the distinction between aspiring to go and actually going, so the wise understand in turn the distinction between these two. So I think basically you start where you are. You can't suddenly make a commitment which you are most certainly going to break the next day. So that's why, like, it's in steps. Technically they call it aspiring bodhicitta and then engaging bodhicitta. So 17th verse says, although great fruits occur in cyclic existence from the mind that aspires to awaken, an uninterrupted flow of merit does not ensue as it does with the venturing mind. So it's all very well to have an aspiring mind and want to benefit and want to generate bodhicitta, but what Acharya Shantideva says, that when you actually engage and you make a commitment to actually follow the bodhisattva path and all, then your merit, of course, increases much more. So, so the venturing mind or the engaging mind of bodhicitta is a stronger, and so at some point, even when we aspire, we should like start taking it more seriously. Verse 19 says, and for those who have perfectly seized this mind with the thought never to turn away from totally liberating the infinite forms of life, from that time hence, even while asleep or unconcerned, a force of merit equal to the sky will perpetually ensue. So this is another kind of advantage of generating bodhicitta. So when one has actually a person has taken the vow to generate bodhicitta, and one has like kind of unconsciously has a commitment to spend your whole life like trying to benefit and trying to benefit to grow your own mind, your own self, your own compassion, so you can benefit. Then even when you're asleep, even when you're not in a position where you can harm someone, through the power of that vow, through the power of that mind, you're still collecting a lot of merit, a lot of good energy for yourself and others. So basically, what you're wishing for at the back of your mind and what you're wanting other people is so great, so like Mahayana great, that even when you're sleeping and not doing anything, through the force that you're doing it just for the purpose of for benefiting others, so you have a very huge amount of merit being developed. And this merit, this kind of a positive energy, what you say, this virtue that manifests as a kind of positive energy, a joyous effort, a joy to help others. That energy is very important, is one of the causes for one to attain Buddhahood. It makes a wisdom able to penetrate even the very subtle kind of negative imprints. Okay, so then the 20th verse, it compares. See, there's the Pali Canon, and there are some practitioners who are not ready, although they have the kind of potential to attain full Buddhahood, but they are also part of the Buddha's disciples. They're also very good practitioners. Buddha's disciples, also main disciples, were practitioners of the Pali Canon, and they had, many of them had attained arhatship. So even these people who are looking towards here, lesser vehicle means those who are trying to attain nirvana for themselves. They also have a lot of compassion. Those who have become arhats, they have removed their self-grasping, so they don't have afflictions like anger and all. But they are not able to remove the subtle imprints. They don't. They are freed from suffering, but they are not able to have an expansive mind of omniscience. They have not developed all the positive qualities. They don't have an unlimited sense of happiness. They have a kind of limited happiness, though they have overcome their suffering. So, because they did not start with bodhicitta, at least the way it appears, so those they can benefit. They have compassion. They have a lot of compassion. They don't generate anger at all, but they should they should realize but to generate the mind of bodhicitta and quickly become a Buddha is way more beneficial than to become an arhat or personal liberation. And it takes much longer for that arhat to then attain Buddhahood than it would for someone who directly generates bodhicitta and enters the Mahayana path. In fact, much longer for the personal liberation seeker to attain Buddhahood. So, so the 21st verse says, even if even the thought to relieve living creatures of merely a headache is a beneficial intention endowed with infinite goodness, then what need is there to mention the wish to dispel their inconceivable misery, wishing every single one of them to realize boundless good qualities? So in even in the common world, we saying someone who's like a person who selflessly tries to relieve someone of a headache, who gives you a pill. You say, "Oh my, how nice that person is! What a compassionate person!" And that person is really good. I mean, people tend to gravitate to respect people who are good, who even help out a little bit, like Mother Teresa. I mean, Mother Teresa had more than that, but even if someone helps someone with a headache, if your mother gives you something to relieve your headache, oh, you feel immediately close to your mother. So, but the Bodhisattva's view is everyone, and not only for to vastly benefit everyone, but to benefit them in a permanent kind of long-lasting way, in long-term way, not just to relieve the headache. because a small kind of happiness, happiness that is not in our control, we have to be able to generate a kind of irreversible kind of lack of suffering, irreversible happiness. So that is more the goal of even of the lesser vehicles, but practitioners, but the Mahayana practitioners want that for everyone without exception. So that person who wants that, or at least partly wants that, so we all have to start somewhere. That person, of course, is regarded as a very nice person, though it may not seem on the outside because they tend to hide their qualities. So, of course, a mind of bodhicitta has such a vast, such a good motivation. So it's really quite something to be revered and aspired to. The verse 22 said, "Then what need is there to mention the wish to dispelling the inconceivable misery, wishing every single one of them to realize boundless good qualities." Do even fathers and mothers have such a benevolent intention as this? Do the gods and sages? Does even Brahma have it? If those beings have never before even dreamt of such an attitude for their own sake, how will it ever arise for the sake of others? So, yeah, basically, I think the Buddhas care for us more than we self-cherishing people care for ourselves. Sometimes we ourselves don't want, can conceive of that kind of happiness or that kind of freedom for suffering. Even father and mother, they have love for us, but do they have an aspiration to make us all enlightened, freedom from suffering? And it's all kind of a little bit tinged with attachment. So even the gods and sages, they can't actually help us. Even if they want to, they cannot actually help us because they don't know the path. And even like Brahma here refers to people like who have power, like worldly gods. You can say like a king or say a president. It's like let's say like President Trump or some ex-President Trump. Do they have such an aspiration to remove misery from any everyone? I don't think so, and so it's a, very often we don't even think about it for ourselves. We are so happy to leave the big price for a small thing like a good meal or something like that. So very often, also this talks about in the Pali Canon, we have the mind of renunciation. So that is the kind of a long-term vision that one aspires for one's own liberation, not just from small things, but from a complete liberation from the for all kinds of suffering forever. So having a control over our own happiness and removal from suffering. So we often don't have the wish ourselves. We just go on. Even if we generate a little bit of bodhicitta, then like it's more important to have a good snooze on Sunday morning than to attend a lecture or meditate or something. Of course, even for ourselves, we don't have that kind of energy. So first, we cannot develop an idea of our own suffering, how to generate the thought of having a kind of lasting, long freedom for ourselves, and then we can also, it helps us to generate bodhicitta. So then we can see how beneficial it will be for everyone. So verse 25 says, "This intention to benefit all beings, which does not arise in others even for their own sake, is an extraordinary jewel of the mind, and its birth is an unprecedented wonder." So I think many people in this world, they may not even have heard of Bodhicitta. I know I didn't really hear about, I didn't know what it meant. So when you hear about it, when you understand what it is, it's a kind of really extraordinary thing. And so this is like the punchline of this chapter. So they're saying this is like a really extraordinary mind, and even for our own sake, we don't think about this kind of benefit. So when you think of everyone without exception, it's a really quite a thing. And many people don't think it's even possible, even for themselves or anyone to develop. So that's the kind of world we live in. But yeah, according to this book and according to the Dalai Lama and the Nalanda masters, it is possible for everyone to generate this mind, and not only that, to go on to perfecting all the perfections and reach Buddhahood. So, of course, it's one thing to note is all they have perfected the generosity and the mind to benefit everyone. And there are lots of Buddhas in the world, uh, and through the times, but how come we are still struggling, we are still suffering? It also depends on the person listening, the disciple, or the other person has to also be able to grow their mind. So it's not the power doesn't rest only with the Buddha can only guide us skillfully. We also have to put effort from our side. Everyone has to. So it's equal. The power is also from one's own side, other people's side, as well as the teachers and the Buddhas. So yeah. So and of course, it's not just when develops bodhicitta. It's not that you go and start a charity and give all your goods away. That's actually it's basically it's a mind training. Before one actually does that, one tries to generate our own qualities. It should be for the right reason, it should be specific to help the person really, not to help ourselves. Of course, the charities and all are there. There are many bodhisattvas who have. There's one famous Tibetan bodhisattva who he went and lived with the lepers and he tried to help the lepers. And there were many Buddhists in the past who did a lot of charity and who used their life even externally benefiting others. And they say he died also of leprosy because he contracted it himself because he was always working with those people. So there are instances, and but also there's an emphasis on meditation, on developing our mind so that our intention is pure. We are able to develop that compassion. So the compassion doesn't come overnight, nor is it necessarily born. You're born with it. You have to kind of practice, and there's a method of practicing. There are two ways of generating bodhicitta. One is called equalizing and exchanging oneself and others. The other one is seven cause and effect method. Seven cause and effect, you visualize everyone as your mother and try to generate compassion and bodhicitta based on that principle that everyone is, I want to repay their kindness. The other one is a stepwise way in which you develop the awakening mind um, by also seeing the kindness of others, of enemies, of strangers, and want to repay that kindness. And slowly you generate that mind. And that mind training is also part of Buddha's teachings that one does not only have to do in words and action. What is the only important thing is what the actual intention behind what you're doing is. And you can only do that power of mind if you train the mind. And for that, one needs meditation. For that, one should practice meditation. And the motivating factor should ideally be the awakening mind, but we don't generate it outright. We have to see, is it beneficial? Are some of the arguments beneficial? Like the chapter on patience, we don't have to be a Buddhist, one doesn't have to be a Mahana Buddhist, but the chapter on patience has a lot of arguments. Acharya Shantideva, a lot of arguments why we should not generate anger at the time of anger, what to do. Like I said, like remain like wood. So even that is a step in the forward direction. So all those kind of arguments, he basically is telling himself what not to do and what to do, and it's mostly applicable even to people in this age. So it's that is another reason. It's a very good book, and even if someone reads it, one can get the qualities one can imbibe some of the qualities. So verse 26 says, how can I fathom the depths of the goodness of this jewel of the mind, the panacea that relieves the pain, a world of pain, and is the source of all its joy. So by benefiting others, by having a mind of bodhicitta, the bodhisattva also generates great joy and has the energy to overcome difficulties. Whenever difficulty come, they are able to turn it into a positive thing for oneself and others. So you're being wisely kind to yourself by generating bodhicitta, but one should be also realistic. But at least don't harm others, but then slowly think about how to benefit others. And also it pays to like take it slowly, to think about it. Is this what I want to do? Does this make sense? Not like suddenly next day like giving all your possessions. That is a little bit it is a short term temporary kind of thing, impulsive. So one should take this slowly and slowly go through the benefits, the how to generate, and then one starts acting on it. If merely a benevolent intention excels the veneration of the Buddhas, this is the 27th verse. What need is there to mention striving to make all beings without exception happy? So, Bodhisattva Buddhas are actually those people who actually deserve veneration because they have perfected the qualities. Not only that, they have compassion for everyone. So even if they guide you, it's always with a good, with the correct motivation to help you. Verse 28, although wishing to be rid of misery, they run towards misery itself. Although wishing to have happiness like an enemy, they ignorantly destroy it. So yeah, so that is one thing that also the lesser vehicle Pali Canon teaches, that like we are trying to rid ourselves of suffering, but doing that, in that we are doing all kinds of harm to ourselves by creating non-virtues, by having delusions. So this is like we should feel compassion to beings because they don't want it, but they're creating it all the time. For those who are deprived of happiness and burdened with many sorrow, it satisfies them with all joys, dispels all suffering. So even the Bodhisattva has a lot of happiness because they are creating virtue and there's a kind of ease, joy. It's may not be immediate, but you're creating a huge amount of virtue. So what makes you happiest is actually helping someone. You can try it, you're helping your enemy, helping someone you don't know. It's just not just a rush of happiness, but you feel a kind of ease, a kind of even feeling, comfort, and that has boundless benefits for even for yourself and of course others. Okay, so basically, so the rest of the verses also say that although one is kind of one is tries to have compassion for others. The best way is to develop the mind of bodhicitta. The best virtue, the strongest way to develop virtue is to have a mind of bodhicitta. Um, so and also that the bodhisattvas and the buddhas, who of course have got it, they are the most worthy of veneration. So please, so I think here Shantideva extols us to follow, to try to engage in the bodhisattva deeds. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, you can ask now. I think all almost over time. So, I mean, there are 10 minutes left. So, if people, you can actually unmute. You can unmute and ask a question if you like, or raise your virtual hand. You can put it in the chat. Yeah, some people are asking where one can find the book. So I think if you're seriously following, you can also order the book. I'm sure it's available on Amazon. The English translation, the good one, is by Stephen Batchelor, recommended one. And the first chapter and the last chapter are in the Blaze. You can get it from the Tibet House website. And um, yeah, so and yeah, it's good to have it as a manual to keep by your bed. So when you're feeling depressed about practice or someone is bothering you, um, okay, then you can refer to the chapter on patience or joyous enthusiasm, and you can get some tips. Shantideva's book has a lot of kind of arguments to oneself. So there's a question on verse 20 on the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So it is for the sake of those inclined towards the lesser vehicle, this was logically asserted by the Tathagata himself in the sutra requested by Subahu. So the person is asking, who is Subahu? So, so basically, it's part of it's a sutra. Referring to a sutra. So I'll just go to the footnotes. So this sutra is called Subhahu Paripracha Sutra. So it's obviously a question, basically, probably asked by Subahu or the Buddha. Historic Buddha has said it to this person. So the Buddha used to teach like someone would ask a question, and the Buddha would tell that person the answer in the way beneficial to that person based on his or her own inclination. So the sutras, there's a huge collection of sutras. So the Acharya Shantideva has kind of condensed them, the salient points in this book. So he says, so there's a quotation from the sutra here in the footnote. If one perseveres for the sake of bringing happiness and benefit to an infinite number of beings, then the infinite roots of virtue from this infinite aim that bears in mind the happiness and benefit of all sentient beings shall increase, expand, and reach towards fulfillment every moment, day and night, regardless of whether one is unconscious or even asleep. So I don't know who Subahu is, but it must be somewhere in the sutra. And the basically, I think what he means to say is even the Buddha taught that the benefit of having bodhicitta is very high, and I guess it's much higher than having an aim only to benefit oneself or to attain even personal nirvana, which is mostly the aim of the people following the Pali Canon, mostly. So yeah, maybe you can find it online, that sutra, and who Subahu is. So does anyone else have a question? So I think the series we're going through it and over again, but this particular series you go through all the chapters. So next chapter is disclosure of wrongdoing. It is to prepare. It is to prepare one for generating, venturing, engaging bodhicitta, mind, and commitment. So it says kind of confession of wrongdoing. It also has a lot about offerings. Has a very nice part. So yeah, offering is a kind of a way to show that we like someone or to venerate someone. So offering is not for the Buddhas. The Buddhas don't need anything. They already have all happiness, but it's from our own side to overcome miserliness, self-cherishing, and to help to kind of offer to others. So there are a lot of visualization on that, and of course about wrongdoing. Yeah, so when we are preparing the mind, we start talking about our confession of what we did wrong, and some of the things we have not done in this life, like killing someone, but we might have done in previous lives. If you believe in previous life, we have the propensity. So a confession, like, it's a very pure way of like regret, showing that we say that we have done something wrong and what we have done wrong, and then go on to the next chapter when one takes the aspiring bodhichitta, which will be taught by some others. Yeah, so if anyone has any other questions. Yeah, so there are no other questions. So I just want to say that, this book, Bodhisattva Charyavatara, it's also translated as Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds, or Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. So it encompasses the whole of Buddha's teachings. So it has both the method aspect of Bodhichitta, also the wisdom aspect in 9th chapter, which is also very important and beneficial. And so when His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches, he often recommends the Shantideva's this particular book. He also teaches it, so do many of our teachers, and it's quoted in many of the other books by Lama Tsongkhapa. So it is important, especially for the development of compassion, great compassion, and then bodhicitta. So from that aspect, it's particularly important. So one should think, yeah. So that's why Acharya Shantideva is also one of the 16 Nalanda Pandits, which are considered important to the Nalanda tradition. So I guess if no one else has questions, we can close it for today. Thank you. I'm so honored that Geshe-la asked me to do this talk, and it's a quite thank you to all the Tibet House staff for arranging it, and thank you all, some of my friends, for participating. Yeah. So the series will be taught by. Will go on. I hope you can join for the rest of the series also. And have a good evening, a good day. Greetings, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shantila. And it was such a great honor to be able to listen to your talk. And even though that I feel very much deep, though I don't have very much knowledge in these, but still I feel like, oh yeah, there's a possibility in so much of learning, since even though that you could able to comprehensively able to teach us. And thank you very much for doing that. And thank you so much for the participants who could able to join. And we are very sorry that we could not able to share the link as easy way. Like we did it through WhatsApp application, like we send it regularly on WhatsApp, and also we usually send it through the Tibet House announcement. So if anybody has missed it, we extremely apologize for that. And the next session, which is on, as Ms. Shantila has already mentioned, which is on Bodhichitta chapter number 2, disclosure of wrongdoing, which will held on 26th of July, and the speaker will be the same as Ms. Shanti Ajnigla. So we shall see you on the 26th of July. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you. And also thank you to those who are watching from YouTube as well. And please join us in our WebEx so that we could able to have very interactive sessions. Yeah, thank you very much. We shall see you soon then. Thank you, Ajahn Shantila.
Shantila, thank you,
Shantila.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Shantila.